but we now have Ben Wikler. Ben Wikler, is that right? From avaz.org, right? Yep. Oh, we're right. Okay, just tell us Avaz, which is A-V-A-A-Z. Just tell us what it is, so that for people that don't know, those unlucky few who don't know what it is.
So Avaz is a word that means voice in Hindi and Urdu and many languages around the world. After we launched, we found out it means goose in Hebrew. But voice is the right one, and it sort of explains what we are. We're an international online civic advocacy network, and
voice is what you don't have. I should explain. Ben has been shouting downstairs actually for several days, but I'm sure he'll explain to you later. And his voice seems to have gone.
Yes, sorry about that. So Avaz is an international online advocacy network, and our mission is to bring sort of public voices into global decision making. So the idea is that technology now allows global decisions and global moments to be addressed directly by people wherever they are. It doesn't have to be our elected representatives representing us or not representing us, as too often happens. So it's something like these climate change negotiations. We've actually been having our members in the countries that have been obstructing negotiations, pressuring their own governments at home and the other delegates to stand firm against their own governments directly, rather than sort of going through these indirect channels. Okay,
well, of course, that's what we're trying to do on Second Life as well. I'm going to ask you about your fossil of the day, because that's where I first saw you, as one of your activities. But isn't what you've just said, I mean, how effective is it? Because these delegates are locked in a room here. They have a few open sessions, and then they go into closed sessions, they go into caucuses. Can you actually influence them by bringing in other voices, or are they too isolated?
Well, the key, I think that the key thing that Avaz can bring to the table is enormous numbers. So Avaz now has after today, actually 1.9 million members around the world. These are all people that have signed online petitions, donated money, taken different online campaigning actions. And the important thing to remember at a negotiations process like this is that to some extent it's in the hands of the delegates that are actually at the table, but mostly it's the instructions that come from the governments at home. And those governments are susceptible to democratic pressure, at least in democratic countries. So if you look at a country like Canada, where more than 90,000 Avaz members have signed a petition to Harper in the last 3 days, it's been covered extensively in national media in Canada. The Fossil of the Day Awards, which we'll talk about soon, have been given to Canada repeatedly. That's got an enormous amount of coverage, and Harper's really feeling the heat. And in fact, we've heard that the Canadian delegation here has kind of changed their tune, not because the delegates were ashamed of the positions they were taking, but rather because Harper realized it was becoming a political liability to be such an obstruction to progress.
You activists certainly know how to talk fast. It seems to be contagious. Fantastic, even though you're losing your voice. Okay, since you've mentioned that in case your voice gives out, I do want to ask you the colossal fossil of the day. Oh, there's a question coming in. Let me hold on to that for a second. Because at 6 o'clock in the UN conference hall here, cheers go up, and there's a reverse countdown, a sort of 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and it gets very exciting, and there's a big crowd, and there's extraordinary noise coming in from somewhere. That's why I'm looking around. And Avaz, is this your organization? It's a group, anyway, a group of NGOs. Perhaps you can tell us what happens. Name the fossil of the day, the worst performing country or delegate in the negotiations. In fact, I've got today's here, just to remind you. So what happens? It's mostly US, Canada, Australia, isn't it? But
well, the Fossil of the Day Awards have actually been presented since 1999, always at 6 p.m. on of these UN climate negotiations, and they're given to the countries that do the most to impede progress. So, as you said, so many of these negotiations are behind closed doors, but with all the NGOs working together, we can get a decent sense of what's been happening in these meetings. People have different friends on different delegations, all this sort of thing. So all the NGOs gather that are members of the Climate Action Network, which is kind of an umbrella group, and we all report back on what we've been hearing, and then we have a vote on which country has done the most to muck things up. And then a few hours later, the announcement is made, and this year we've gone taken it particularly far. So we've had an awards show with, I'm the MC. We have youth representatives from different countries receiving we call them dishonors on behalf of their countries. We give lumps of coal to countries that win or lose, depending on how you look at it. And we keep a running scoreboard. We have a Fossil of the Day international anthem based on the Jurassic Park theme song. It's quite a show. And what it creates is a kind of way for media to show an image other than sort of men in suits behind tables and also to sort of dramatize the ways that the countries are either allowing breakthroughs or blocking them.
Yeah. And I have to say, I've been down once or twice, and I've seen delegates lurking at the back of the crowd, waiting to see whether they're named and shamed. Have you had any feedback from delegations?
We have. I mean, a little bit of it has been direct to me, but mostly it's been NGOs or friends on country delegations talking about how countries react. So Australia, has this new government. Rudd is very vocal about his commitment to fighting climate change, but at these negotiations, Rudd has not accepted the key thing, which is binding reference to the binding cuts for the year 2020 that are necessary to avert a catastrophe. And so Australia, to its tremendous dismay, has won First Place Fossil of the Day award, 2 dishonorable mentions, and we've heard that the Canadian delegation meetings have been, a fair amount of time has been taken up complaining about these NGOs handing out these bits of coal and quite frustrated with them. The other side of the equation is Saudi Arabia, which apparently delights in winning Fossil of the Day awards. The Saudi delegation, my guess is, gets a pay raise whenever they manage to obstruct things here, and the Fossil of the Awards is perfect proof of it. So there are reports of the Saudi delegates taking photographs in front of the scoreboard whenever they rise in the rankings.
Okay, 2 questions before your voice goes. One, Jeff from Denver. Is there a praising component to your operations or just shaming? Also, I applied you guys for finding an upbeat way to call out the evildoers. I think they're all I think all the negative press turns off regular people, but you found a better way to do it. So a bit of praise for you, but do you praise other people, or is it just damning the evildoers?
Well, the funny thing, excuse me, there's been a lot of talk about whether there should be a positive award as well as the Fossil Awards. In some years there have been Sunshine Awards given out. The trouble, or the blessing, depending on how you look at it, is that the vast majority of countries here are doing the right thing. So you have, it's 190 countries that are gathered. You have 5, essentially, that compete for the Fossil of the Day Awards, and then you have 185 that should be winning Sunshine Awards every day for being quite constructive in the talks. So, we hope that it's its own reward to do a good job on climate change, and there are lots of ways that countries can get praise. They give stirring speeches, they make positive movements, and with the NGOs we sort of see our particular ability to shine a spotlight on the things that countries would rather not have publicized.
Okay, this is Ben Wikler of Avaz, which I think I pronounced wrongly. How do you pronounce it?
Well, I pronounce it Avaz, but it's a word in Hindi and Urdu, neither of which I speak, so I might be pronouncing it wrong as well.